from Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Qwest Pontoons and Polarcraft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. More than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan, and glad to have you along with us. How are you? How you doing? What have you been up to since we last talked? Well, this is the first time that you and I have talked since it's officially spring. Doesn't that sound good? Now, in my part of the world, yes, it does feel like spring. Mother Nature's, she's letting winter go, kicking and screaming, but it does feel like spring for the most part. It does look like spring for the most part. It does sound like spring for the most part. My friends in the Yup, you might disagree. If you're up in the Keweenaw, I'm sure you disagree, but it's coming. The calendar says springtime. Since we've last talked, I had a chance to have a wonderful outdoor adventure, something I haven't done for a while. I was on the Saginaw River jigging for walleye. I love to do that. I used to be a hardcore river rat. I fished the Saginaw, I fished the Tittabawassee, I fished the Shiawassee, drift in the current, bouncing jigs off the bottom, sometimes tipped with minnows, sometimes just plastic, but I really enjoy that. I was out there with Nick Grillo of Michigan Brand Meats. Nick said, "Hey, I'm going fishing. He said, I'm going fishing tomorrow. You want to go?" You don't have to ask me twice. I knew it was going to be a good day when at the boat launch, waiting to launch, an eagle flew overhead. I thought, that is so cool. I'm old enough that for me, every time I see an eagle, it's a big deal. You know, there didn't used to be a lot of eagles flying around the state, so to me, it's still a big deal. My grandkids see eagles almost every day. And for them, seeing an eagle is like seeing a seagull. They don't make the distinction. But for those of us who remember when there weren't a lot of birds, eagles flying around, it's a big deal. In fact, that morning on the Saginaw River, there were eagles flying overhead, and there was one big adult white-headed bird that sat up in a tree and watched us most of the morning. Lots of boats on the river and lots of fish. It was a very special experience to a guy like me who has watched this Saginaw Bay and River walleye fishery rebound. And it was also special to be out there because it was at a time that was normally closed to anglers. We talked about this last week on the radio show. Saginaw River below Center Street, which is the first bridge downstream of Wicks Park, is open year-round now. 8 fish, 13-inch size limit. And I wondered last weekend how hard that fishery, how hard that resource was going to get hit. Looks like it's going to get hit pretty hard. But the biologists say the resource can handle it, and I will trust them. They also say, talking with Jason Gasto last week on the show, he said that the reason the Saginaw River, the Saginaw Bay regulations were changed back in 2015 was to try to thin out the walleye population, in some degree, to thin out the walleye population and to help out the yellow perch population. He says that has not happened. They haven't seen a statistical significant bump there. And I said, Jason, if that's the case, then will you cut back on those liberal harvest restrictions, regulations on Saginaw Bay? Will we see it go back to 5 fish of 15 inches anytime soon? He said that is on the table. Personally, I wouldn't mind seeing that. But again, I'm not a biologist. But it's so rewarding to be drifting along with the current, have the rod in your hand, bouncing a jig off the bottom, bump, 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 boom, there's a fish. So I really enjoyed that. Another thing I really enjoy doing, as you know, is bear hunting. Now, the powers that be here in Michigan, again, the Biologist, the NRC, the DNR, even though we have a vibrant, viable bear population, they have decreased the number of tags for hunters this fall. I have a hard time figuring that one out. If you have more bear, why do you cut back on the bear tags? Cody Norton, who is a big game biologist for the DNR, will be with us in the next couple of segments to talk about that and help me figure that out and get that through my thick brain about why that's a desired outcome. Kansas has joined the growing list of states that has banned trail cameras on public lands. Not just cell cameras, but the old style where you put a card in where you have to go out and pull the card. I hope Michigan doesn't do that. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I hope it's not just the, oh my goodness, technology is invading the outdoors. We're becoming too technologically astute in the outdoors and we need to pull back. I hope that's not the reason. I hope that's not just a knee-jerk reaction to technology. Because if you look at how technology has invaded the outdoors, both in hunting and fishing, that would be a slippery slope. I mean, what about live scope? Some tournaments have already banned live scope. That's the technology that lets you see out to the front, and you can see individual fish, and you can cast your bait, and you can see it drop down into those fish and see how they react. Yeah, technology has invaded the outdoors, but it has invaded our lives in general. Is it necessarily a bad thing? I don't think so. Depends on how you use it. We don't do things the way we used to in the old days, right? As an example of that, I had a guy, Jeff Sugden, sent me some video. Actually, it's film. It was shot on 8mm film back in probably the 70s. It was when bear archery still had their plant here in Michigan in Grayling. And it's home movies of Fred Bear walking out behind the plant with one of his employees named Tom Prill, if I remember right. Tom was dressed up in a bear suit with bear headgear on. It was basically a helmet to protect him. And it's film, now video, of Fred stalking behind the plant. He's got his recurve, his left-handed recurve. And this bear jumps out from behind a brush pile. And Fred draws that recurve. I'm doing it right now in the studio, left-handed. Fred draws that recurve and he shoots the bear. He shot him with a flu arrow and a blunt tip. A rubber tip. Now, the story I've been told is Fred told Tom, it's not going to hurt. Don't worry about it. It's not going to hurt. You've got that big protective suit on. It won't hurt. And Tom said, oh, yeah, it hurt. Believe me, it hurt, he said. So I posted that film, now video, on my Facebook page and on my Instagram feed. And I think it's pretty cool. Now, would I advise you go out and shoot somebody with a flu arrow and a blunt tip? No. Am I going to criticize the man himself, the legend Fred Bear, for doing it? Absolutely not. Because some people did. They said, well, and I'm saying, well, the guy's Fred Bear. He can pretty much do what he wanted to do. But I thought it was cool. I thought it was cool to be able to see that old film. And I appreciate when people share these old resources with me. And why did Jeff do it? Because he said, hey, I know you've met Fred Bear. And even though it was Jeff's wife's uncle, Tom Prill, the guy who was in the video, the film, he sent it to me and he said, feel free to share it. And I did, and I appreciate the opportunity to do things like that. Here in Michigan, don't forget you'll need a new fishing license coming up April 1st. That is just around the corner. Also, Walleye for Warriors. If you want to be a boat captain for the Walleye for Warriors event on Saginaw Bay to honor and help and take out veterans fishing on the bay this summer, that event is June 10th and 11th. Boat captain registration is open. Go to walleyesforwarriors.org, walleyesforwarriors.org. This is not for veterans yet. This is for boat captains only. And you could sign up to be a boat captain. I'm not signing up because I will be bear hunting that previous week with Ron St. Louis of Northern Wilderness Bear Outfitters in Ontario, but I will be there for the big event on Sunday. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine show after the break, Cody Norton talking about why we have decreased the number of bear tags here in Michigan. Then Nick Grillo of Michigan Brand. He is waiting to catch some trophy perch, but he's going to talk with us before he does. Lance Valentine in hour 2 talks about fishing the Detroit River. Nick Green of MUCC follows up. And in our third hour, Mr. Angler Quest himself, Brad Dupuie. And, of course, we wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. My name is Mike Avery. The show is Outdoor Magazine. My website is MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Don't hesitate to reach out. I do want to hear from you. There's a lot coming up in the next 3 hours. I hope you can stick around. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK 105.7 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette, WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazines, speaking of above the bridge, is brought to you by Rapid River Knives. You know I have a Rapid River knife in my pocket right now, as I always do. I have much respect for the folks at Rapid River. Handmade pieces of art that are designed to be used. They come with a lifetime guarantee. I would encourage you to stop by their showroom on US 2 just east of Rapid River to check out what I'm talking about. If you can't make it up there, go to the website rapidriverknifeworks.us, rapidriverknifeworks.us, and you will see what I mean. I was talking before the break about my love for bear hunting. I don't expect to get a bear tag here in Michigan this year, so I will be going north of the bridge to Canada, in fact, Ontario, to hunt with Ron St. Louis of Northern Wilderness Bear Outfitters. Now, Cody Norton is a DNR wildlife biologist who is also a hardcore bear hunter. He has hunted with Ron St. Louis as well, so I know he loves to hunt bears. And he's with us now this week on the Outdoor Magazine phone line to talk about bears in Michigan, bear numbers in Michigan, and bear hunting in Michigan. Cody, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing real good. I'm looking forward to going up and hunting with our mutual friend, Ron St. Louis, this spring. I'd love to hunt bears in Michigan again this fall, and I will put in for Newberry, third season. I doubt if I will get a tag, though, especially this year, Cody, because you guys have cut back on the number of tags. Help me understand, Cody, why this is. If we have a viable, vibrant, and maybe even growing bear population, why cut back on the number of tags?
Absolutely. No, and it's a great question, Mike, and I think something that, when we propose quotas to our Natural Resources Commission, a lot of times folks are only seeing the number of licenses and not how many bears we're actually trying to harvest. So for the Newberry unit specifically, we're still trying to harvest the same number of bears that we did the last 2 seasons and several seasons before that. But we did go above our desired harvest a bit in the last few years because hunter success has improved. And so when hunter success goes up, that means if we want to try to still harvest the same number of bears that we were attempting to in the past, that means we need to reduce the licenses a bit.
Okay, so you're not trying to cut back on the statewide bear harvest, right? You just want to keep it flat, keep it the same?
Yes. Yes, sorry. So for the Newberry unit, we're trying to keep it the same. Most units in the state, we're looking to keep it the same because we're happy with the trajectory of the bear population in those units, with the exception of Kearney, Baldwin, and Gladwin, where we're actually recommending a 10% increase.
A 10% increase. Okay, so some parts of the state will see an increase.
So they will see an increase in desired harvest, the number of bears we want to harvest. The Baldwin unit, I believe, is the only unit where we'll actually have an increase in license quota associated with that. But, you know, if we look at our population estimates for the Northern Lower and Upper Peninsula, we've got increasing populations in a lot of areas, which has been the goal and throughout the entire Upper Peninsula is to grow this population. But as that happens, hunters typically get a little bit more successful. And so when we are calculating how many licenses to give out to achieve our desired harvest, that, you know, bumps those licenses down in some situations.
Can you see how this is a little confusing, though, to a non-biologist?
Absolutely. And that's why I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, Mike, because it's not, you know, necessarily intuitive unless we can actually, you know, talk through it. And I love, you know, being able to actually show people numbers because it really is it's a pretty simple, you know, calculation that we do. But if you think about it from the department standpoint, we're trying to have the desired impact on the bear population to ensure that, you know, that population remains viable, that we're moving it in the right direction. And so that's why we start with desired harvest and then calculate how many licenses we need to give out to achieve that. And so sometimes, you know, if hunter success decreases a little bit in the unit, that might mean we give out more licenses to achieve the same harvest. But if hunter success goes up, you know, that means the opposite happens.
All right, so let's jump back a step then. The bear population in Michigan, how's it doing? Anecdotally, and I've told you this before, anecdotally, from mid-Michigan, you know, the middle part of the lower peninsula, I feel like the bear population's increasing. I feel like it's expanding. I mean, we're seeing bears downstate in areas we haven't for a long time. So how is our statewide bear population doing overall?
Absolutely. So, yeah, in our Upper Peninsula, our latest estimate from 2021 is about 10,650 bears, and that's up about 25% since 2012.
Wow.
And if you remember back to 2012, that's when we reduced license quotas across most of the state by about 30% because there was concern about our bear population and that it could potentially be declining. And so that's why, especially in the Upper Peninsula, we've been trying to grow that population ever since. And slowly ratcheting up harvest, you know, as that population's increased. But then the Northern Lower, like you said, so our latest estimate is about 2,200 bears, and that's up almost 70%, about 69% since 2012. And we actually had, I think in the Red Oak unit especially, we had even more than the 30% license quota reduction there. So, you know, our plan was to increase our bear population in the Northern Lower. Now it's to try to stabilize that population. And so, you know, during the last regulation cycle as well as this current one and several before, we've been doing some larger increases in the amount of harvest we want to have down there in most of the units. And then, like you said, with an expanding distribution and something that seems to be kind of hard for folks to wrap their head around too is, you know, you might not be seeing almost 70% more bears in the area you hunt, but it's bears, you know, expanding out throughout the Northern Lower. So our bear distribution, you know, using harvest to try to look at that, has increased about 74% over that same time period. So not only more bears, but bears in areas that they haven't been in the past.
Well, and the thing about bears, they're not like deer. I mean, if you've got deer in the area and you drive in the evening or morning, you're going to see them. You could have a bear living in the 40 behind the house, and you might not even know it. They're not as visible as whitetails.
Sure, absolutely.
So again, let's go back to this, Cody, because I'm trying to wrap my brain around this. We have more bears, but we're cutting back on the bear tags because hunters are more effective at harvesting them. Correct?
Yes. In In several units. Yep. So, the Amasa, Baraga, Kearney, and Drummond Island units, we're looking at having the same number of licenses as previous. And like I said, Baldwin, we'd be looking at an increase. But then in some of those units like Bergland, where we've been above our desired harvest now for several years and seen increases in hunter success, as well as Gwynn, Newberry, and Gladwin and Red Oak in the northern lower, where we've got some, increasing populations. Those are a slight reduction in tags.
You talk about Drummond Island. That's kind of an interesting case. I don't think you put many tags out for Drummond every year, and it takes a lot of years to get a tag there, doesn't it?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it is right now, but it's usually in the 18 to 19 years of preference points you've got to accumulate. We typically give out, that actually went up because success rate did drop from 100% for many years to about 80%. So we give out 6 licenses to try to harvest 5 bears out there.
All right, so when you look at, and let's not take late seasons into account. Let's just look at first seasons. Where are the most popular bear hunting destinations in our state? Where do bear hunters want to go? What are the most popular areas?
Sure. I mean, Baldwin and Red Oak in the northern lower, I think it's closer to people. A lot of people, from the southern lower have camps or property in the northern lower, so they like to go up to those units. So there's definitely a lot of pressure, and there's not as much. There's only one hunt period, so that's gets a lot of applicants, a lot of pressure, and that drives up the preference points required to get a license for those. Newberry, which is of course where you like to go. I think a lot of other folks from the Lower Peninsula like to go there. This is the first unit, it's the closest one to home, and so a lot of different areas and opportunities to go. Amasa in the UP has been known for a long time as having one of the higher success rates and having a lot of bears. It's typically been managed a little bit more conservatively by the biologists that have worked there. So that's kind of a destination unit as well. But I'd say those are the ones where we see, if you look at the number of preference points required, you can see that reflected, that there's just more demand for those units in general.
Well, in my case, I like Newberry because I got a buddy there, Johnny Bowler, who's out there guiding and baiting every fall. So it's easy for me. It's not that I have any more love for Newberry than anywhere else. No disrespect to the rest of the UP. I mean, if I was to go further west or further north, it'd be a lot easier to get a tag, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if you go to the far western UP, it's much easier. Usually, even a first season tag is usually 3 to 4 points in Baraga and Bergland. So quite a bit less than Newberry now is, I think, in the 8-point range. I don't have it in front of me, but
sure.
That has certainly gone up, quite a bit, and there's more competition for those in recent years. So,
Cody, boil it down here. We got about a minute before we take a break, and I will bring you back for a second segment. But is this going to have say? I'm going to get real personal here. Like in my case, I could get third tag every other year. Will hunters like me see that changing with the restriction in tags?
No. So the changes that are happening this year are pretty minor. It's basically an adjustment, based on success rate. So it's not like we're doing huge decreases in the amount of bears we want to harvest or huge increases that would really change preference points. If you look at Newberry third season for last year for drawing, 466 residents applied and 457 got a tag. So almost everybody with 1 point got a license last time. This year, it's a decrease of 165 licenses out of over 1,000. So we don't really expect that to have a significant impact on the amount of points you need to accumulate for getting one.
Gotcha. Hang tight, Cody. We're talking with Cody Norton of the Michigan DNR, the website michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. Cody is he's a wildlife biologist, but he's a big game specialist. So he deals with, and this is very cool, bears, cougars, wolves. I mean, right, there's going to be some headaches there when you talk about some of those topics, but pretty cool as well. We'll take a break. When we come back, more with Cody Norton of the Michigan DNR right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Houghton Lake on the Twister, 92.1 WTWS, the Twister. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain on WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Boning Archery, Michigan-based Boning, a leader in the archery industry since 1946. I mean, Boning was involved in archery back when Fred Bear was around. These days, they continue to innovate, come up with new products, new manufacturing processes. I will have Boning products on my turkey hunting rig as I head to the Michigan turkey woods this spring. Also, my springtime bear hunt in Ontario as well. Check them out online at boning.com. That's BOHNING.com. We're talking now with Michigan DNR wildlife biologist, big game specialist, in fact, Cody Norton, of the Michigan DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. Cody, let's talk a little bit more about bears, a topic that I love and I think you do as well. Are the bears still denned up across the state at this point?
Yeah, I'd say most of them are. Typically, we see them come out in like mid to the third week of April, at least here in the UP. In the northern lower, it can be a little bit sooner. But definitely, I mean, northern lower staff typically start hearing the first reports of bears being out in mid to late March too. So bears, not every bear is on the same schedule, and some get bumped or get flooded out when they get warm ups. But yeah, most of them are still in their dens.
And if they got bumped out of their den for some reason at this point, would they den back up, or would they likely just stay out?
Most likely, I mean, we're getting to the point where they might just kind of find a nice spot to lay down. Some bears in the northern lower or southern UP will actually do like ground nests or open stumps, where their back's exposed or even more of their body's exposed. And they can spend the whole winter like that. So a lot of times they'll have, alternate spots maybe in mind that they run to if they do get bumped out. Sometimes with logging operations, disturbing slash piles or something that a bear decided to den up in, they'll get kicked and find somewhere else to spend the winter. But they seem to do pretty well even if they get bumped.
As I said earlier, too, you're also responsible for cougars and wolves. What's the latest on wolves? You guys did a survey this winter, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yep. So the winter of 2022-23.
I surprised you, Cody. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And look,
you're fine. I'm sorry. It was the. I think it's the previous winter, right? So.
What's did you do a survey this winter, or are we dealing with any new numbers? Do you have anything new for us?
So we did get. So we're doing some other estimation techniques right now too. So I'm running them together. But
Gotcha.
It was the winter of 2021-22 that we got our most recent. Minimum population estimate. That's our typical estimate that we've been doing since 1989. So that minimum estimate was 631 wolves, plus or minus 49. So of course there's some error, around that estimate. But we are currently in the process of working on a research project where we're evaluating two other techniques for estimating the wolf population, and then we're going to be able to kind of compare those with our current estimate and see, which one will be best to carry forward in the future.
And Cody, I know these decisions are made above your pay grade, but I feel like the department's just waiting for the go-ahead from the feds or the federal courts to be able to have a wolf hunt here in sometime in the near future, right? I mean, you're just waiting for them.
So, yeah, I mean, we certainly support wolf delisting here in Michigan. We want management authority of wolves. We feel that they have met all federal and state recovery goals, and that they, belong under state management. But yes, federal court cases have vacated Fish and Wildlife Service decisions to delist them. So when they've come off the list, there's been lawsuits challenging that delisting that's put them back under endangered status here in Michigan. So we do not have management authority. That's not even a decision we can consider right now.
Anything new on cougars? You just got a few of them wandering around that you see on trail camera once in a while, or anything new?
Yeah, we've I think during 2022, since we're kind of wrapping that up, we've got 11 confirmed sightings so far, and there's probably a few more pending that we're still working on. A lot of those were basically, there seems to be two clusters, one in the East Dupuie, one in the West Dupuie of sightings, which most of those are trail camera photos. And we've had a couple instances where we've been able to get camera photos, a day apart and over 100 miles apart. So that makes us feel, pretty confident that those are separate individuals. So we've only been able to do that, with sightings clustered in the West, clustered in the East, which would suggest there's, maybe two individuals that have been hanging around the last few years. But that's kind of what we know. We're trying to keep tabs on any time an animal might show up from out West. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to confirm, the last few straggler reports as well here soon.
All right, Cody, appreciate that. Appreciate the update on the bears. Also, and I'm not gonna, I won't, surprise you with this, but sometime here, I'd like to get you back on the air and talk about wolves in the northern lower, because there's a lot of talk about it, a lot of rumors, a lot of myths, a lot of misconceptions, and people who swear there's a whole bunch of them there. I'm not sure I buy into it, but we'll bring you back on to talk about that. All right.
Okay. No, that sounds good, Mike.
All right. Cody Norton of the DNR, Michigan.gov/DNR, Michigan.gov/DNR. I've heard stories about game wardens swooping in on a lake in northern Michigan and shooing the people off. And honest to goodness, they said black helicopters came in, landed, and let wolves go. Wow. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap up this first hour with Nick Grillo of Michigan Brand Meats. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in port here on WPHM 1380 AM. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your Mid-Michigan tracker and angler quest and Polar Craft headquarters. For more information, check them out online, linwoodbeachmarina.com, linwoodbeachmarina.com. Last I saw, the ramps are open, the bay is open, and it's time to rock. LinwoodBeachMarina.com. Want to turn our attention now to a friend of mine, Nick Grillo of Michigan Brand Meats. Nick is a hardcore hunter and angler. He just got back recently from a snow goose hunt down south. He invited me for a walleye fishing trip on the Saginaw River a few days ago, and now he's sitting at the boat launch in northwest Michigan, ready to go after some jumbo perch. Nick, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hey, Mike. Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing real good. You've been busy.
I have. That's, like we talk about, that's one of the joys of being in Michigan. There's always something fun to do, huh?
Well, I think there is. And you guys at Michigan Brand, one of the reasons I think we have such a great partnership, you make great products, but you guys are hardcore hunters and anglers, especially you, Nick.
Yeah, love it. Like you mentioned, we were out just a couple days ago on the Saginaw River there and the Polar Craft, and we had a pretty darn good day, huh?
Well, you did. I just, for the most part, watched you catch fish. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to be out there. And now you're chasing jumbos, and I've seen pictures of you with Bob Hines of Central Coast Angling. Man, you guys are slamming those big slabs.
Yep, and that's who we're with today, actually, too. We're taking the call in the truck right now, sitting at the boat launch because we're supposed to get some rain. So didn't want a chance to be on the water, getting soaked, and trying to be on the phone. So, yep, so sitting at the boat launch and then hopefully go get a limit here in just another hour or two.
Well, I appreciate you holding off and delaying your trip, but you've also got some big news, Nick. You guys have some new products there at Michigan Brand.
Yeah, exactly. So We've been kind of doing this a little bit lately, but we decided to launch it with a really hot jerky we have right now. So we're doing it only in beef jerky, but for those people that say they want a hotter flavor of jerky, well, you got what you're asked for. We're doing a ghost pepper beef jerky. Yep. So, again, fair warning to anybody that thinks they can do it. I mean, I want people to try it, but I'm kind of a wuss when it comes to hot stuff, so it's not for me. But yep, so we have a ghost pepper hot beef jerky right now that's available on our website, on our online store.
Nice. And last week on Wednesday Night Live, or 2 weeks ago too, you were showing me a new stick with big chunks of cheese in it. What's that one?
Yep. So it's actually our same recipes, but we're actually we changed up how we're grinding it now. It's a long story I won't get into, but we have a different grinding plate that is now on our stuffer. So it doesn't chop up the cheese as fine. So basically the big cheese chunks are going to stay big. So our cheddar cheese venison and our cheddar cheese buffalo, our hot pepper cheese that's in our jalapeno and venison, our jalapeno and hickory, that's going to stay big chunks. So same thing that all the people that have been mentioning that they like cheese, well, you got what you asked for. Now our summer sausage has big chunks of cheese in it, and it's actually coming out really good.
Excellent. And Michigan brand has been growing like crazy. You're available all across the state. I always hear from people, well, how do I don't see them. If they go to your website, michiganbrand.net, they can put in their zip code and there's a store locator right on your website, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. We put a lot of time into that to even break it down by what stores carry what product. So if you are, for example, we just mentioned the summer sausage. If you're looking for a refrigerated summer sausage, that's on the website where it will tell you which stores exactly carry that. So like you said, if you're in Grand Rapids or if you're up by Traverse City or if you're over in Saginaw, just punch in your zip code and you can even sort it by how many miles if you want to look in 30 miles or 100 miles from your zip code. And yeah, every store will pop up. It's a pretty cool feature.
It is very cool. And of course, at the Avery house for Easter, we will have a Michigan brand ham on our table as we do for all holidays. And for the next couple of weeks until Easter, we're going to continue to give away Michigan brand hams as part of our ham for the holidays on Wednesday Night Live too, Nick.
Yep, 'tis the season. Yeah, we're already rolling with hams. We got a lot of the stores we're filling up this last week and this week. And like you said, we got the Wednesday Night Lives. That's always fun every year to do the ham for holidays. So, yep, love this time of year.
All right, Nick, listen, I really appreciate the fact that we're working together. It's a great Michigan-based, family-owned company with great products. You're a hardcore outdoorsman. I love that. And I'll let you get back on the water here. Good luck chasing those big jumbo perch.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right. Nick Grillo of Michigan Brand Meats, the website, michiganbrand.net, michiganbrand.net. If you go to that website, you can find out where Michigan Brand products are available in your backyard. Also, follow them on social media and follow Nick on social media as well. He's always posting highlights of his hunting and fishing adventures, and it's very cool. Speaking of fishing adventures, we'll take a break here for the top of the hour, but when we come back, we'll talk with a guy that Nick and I have both fished with before, Lance Valentine of Teachin Fishin. He will talk about how to fish the Detroit River for walleye in the springtime. It's a big body of water. It's deep. It is fast. It can be intimidating for first-timers. We'll pick Lance's brain on that. And then Nick Green of MUCC will be with us. And in our third hour, Mr. Angler Qwest himself, Brad Dupuie. And, of course, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar right here on Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Qwest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction. Did you hear what Ken said? He said, Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show. He didn't say Michigan's #1 outdoor podcast. He said Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show. This is an outdoor radio show heard on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And that is pretty unique. And in my I guess not so humble opinion, it's pretty cool because I'm trying to think, how many Michigan-based syndicated outdoor radio shows are there? Well, there's a couple. Nobody's been in the air longer. Nobody has more affiliates. And I just think the best way to listen to this show, if you can, is on your local AM or FM station. But isn't it nice to know that if you can't, if your local station doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, or if you live in some part of our state not covered by the broadcast signal, isn't it nice to know that as a backup, there is a podcast version of the show available? Now, a lot of people, the only thing they put out is a podcast, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the thing that sets this show apart is it is primarily a broadcast radio show. Produced, recorded, distributed, syndicated as a radio show. But if you can't, again, listen to the radio show, there is a podcast available. You can hear the podcast on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, on my Facebook page. You can hear it on, well, all right, Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Music, Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spotify, yada, 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 yada. Even on YouTube. I put it up on YouTube and people watch/listen to it every week. While we're talking about podcasting, because I love podcasting. Podcasting is a great way to get the word out, to tell your story, to inform people, to entertain people, to educate people. And I do podcasts every month for some of my my advertising partners, including Offshore Tackle, Angler Qwest boats, Polar Craft boats, and Primal Outdoors. And when we're done here in the studio today recording this week's radio show, I will record a Primal Outdoors podcast. In fact, I'll be talking with David Blanton. You know that name, David Blanton of Realtree. He's been around the outdoor industry forever. He's one of the biggest names in the outdoor media today and for the last several years. So he will be on the Primal Outdoors podcast. You can look for that on their website, primaloutdoors.com. That's primaloutdoors.com. I will also put a link on my social media outlets as well. So it is springtime. Now, the calendar says springtime. Mother Nature is still going back and forth on what she wants to do, but we're moving in the right direction. When I think of springtime, you know what I think of. I think of turkey hunting. This year, I think of my springtime bear hunt, and I think of walleye fishing. In fact, I was on the Saginaw River here just a few days ago jigging for walleye, and it felt so good. It was, and to be out there on the Saginaw River during a time of year that the river had been closed for the last several years was very cool. As much as I love fishing close to home, there is no doubt that the best walleye fishing in the state coming up over the next few weeks is in the Detroit River. That river is a world-class walleye fishery. You cannot dispute it. You cannot argue it. One of the best out there. But it can be very intimidating. It's a big river. It's a wide river. It's a deep river, and it is a fast river. So for people not accustomed to that, it can be even overwhelming. Lance Valentine, though, is a guy who has been fishing that river for many, many years. He has the ability to dissect a fishery, to share that knowledge, and teach others. In fact, he does that with his website, teachinfishin.com. And he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Lance, welcome back. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic, Mike. Good to talk to you.
Always a pleasure. You're heading out west right now yourself, aren't you, before you come back to Detroit?
Well, actually, when I was talking to you, I'm a week ahead, so I'm doing that next week.
Oh. It's hard to keep track of you coming and going these days, isn't it, Lance?
I'll tell you how bad it is. My garbage guy comes on Thursday, and I took my trash out Tuesday night. So that's how confused I am on what day it is.
Well, it's better to be busy than bored anytime.
Yeah, I think that's the truth.
So let's talk about this Detroit River fishery. Lance, when will you really get serious about that body of water?
So my first guide trip is April 4th. So I start, actually we start April 3rd. We put together something really cool this year called the Detroit River Course. Detroit River Definitive course, which guys can purchase, and it includes all of our content we've ever done about river jigging and Detroit River specifically. It includes our Detroit River workshop course that we did last year, 4 hours of information on the Detroit River, and then they get to spend 3 hours in the boat with me, not necessarily fishing, but going over all the things that we taught them in the course. So I've got my first group in the boat on April 3rd, and I start chartering on April 4th, and I am doing 2 trips a day, every day, all the way through May 22nd. So once I get there, I'll be there, and I will not leave there until basically right before Memorial Day. So it'll be a yeah.
I'm waiting to see how you describe it.
Yeah, it'll definitely be a war of attrition. Because obviously we're going to get some bad weather days, we're going to get some bad fishing days, we're going to get some rough water. It's just part of what it is. So, but it's my favorite time of year. It's like you said, it's some of the best fishing, not just here. It's some of the best fishing in the country. You're hands-on with the fish. As much as I love to troll, you're hands-on with the fish, so you got the ability to actually feel them bite. It's a fairly easy fishery to fish if you know a few things. Doesn't take a lot of really fancy equipment. And man, oh man, every time you set the hook on a fish, it could be that 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 pounder you've been looking for. So I don't know what else you would want from a fishery than what the Detroit River actually offers.
Well, it's interesting. You say fairly easy. I, as somebody who doesn't spend a lot of time down there, I don't know if I see it as fairly easy. I see it, again, as a little bit intimidating.
Yeah, it can be at first. Like you said earlier, the river is, it's a big river, and it's a working river, right? It's one of the busiest commercial waterways in the world every year as far as tonnage goes. So not only is it a bigger river, there's a lot of current. You do get affected by weather. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of commercial traffic. But once you get over that intimidation factor and you kind of understand, that walleyes are walleyes, and the same way they move in a big river like Detroit is the exact same way they move in a small river like the Tittabawassee. It's just a bigger scale and magnitude. And once you understand a little bit of things you need to do for boat control and keeping your jig vertical and keeping it on the bottom, it's really not that difficult to do. Not like anything else, all the intricacies of it and all the little details of it and all the time on the water and kind of knowing and feeling what's happening. That's all comes with time on the water. But for a guy to get down there and get started, a day or two, he should kind of be dialed in and be able to start catching some fish.
Boat control. I hear that from you all the time talking about jigging. It's important for fishing, but it's also important on the Detroit River just to avoid other boats. So you get a busy day on the weekend when the weather's nice, and you got to have boat control just to avoid each other.
Yeah, and if everybody's doing it right, though, if everybody's keeping their line vertical, everybody's working downstream and moving their boat, following their line, and keeping their line vertical, you can fish a lot of boats in a small area, and you should never have a problem if everybody is kind of on the same page. Every once in a while, you get somebody in there into a pod of people who struggles with their boat control or is new to it or is working on a new trolling motor, and I usually, if those guys kind of are around me, I kind of say, hey, what can I do to help you? What are you doing? I do this, and I kind of try to get them to go to a spot where the bottom is level and the bottom is clean, so they can spend 15, 20 minutes, get dialed in and figure out exactly what to do, and then come back and kind of get in the group. But one of the things about Detroit River, it's a very social fishery. I can't tell you how many guys I've met and talked to or tossed jigs to, and we're just yakking and we're talking about this and we're talking about that, and I'm sure the conversation this year will lead to what the Lions are doing this fall, and it's a very, very social fishery. If you like to fish and talk to people, it's actually a pretty good fishery because you are in close proximity to a lot of other boats. When the bite gets really good and you find that really good spot, there's usually a lot of people there, and you can make it a fun day.
Is it like a lot of fisheries in that you can find fish everywhere, or are there days when they're concentrated in just certain spots and that's where you've got to be to find the fish?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now, there usually are, because there is so many fish in that river, there usually are fish, I don't want to say everywhere, but there definitely are fish all up and down that river from north to south, east to west. The problem is, where are the biters, right? Where are the fish that want to bite? Where are the fish that are turned on? Where are the fish that are actively, aggressively feeding? How do you find those pods? And then, again, that's kind of an experience thing. That's kind of understanding the weather. That's kind of understanding how fish move up and down the river. That's understanding what they need at different times. Because we're getting fish. We got fish in here, in the river now that are in really early pre-spawn, and then we're going to kind of go through the pre-spawn process. We'll get to late pre-spawn. We'll get to the spawn, and we'll get to early post-spawn, mid post-spawn, and late post-spawn. And depending on where the fish that you're fishing, the part of the river you're fishing, depending on where they are in that process.
Hang tight, Lance. Sorry to cut you off, but we've got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. We're talking with Lance Valentine of Teachin Fishin, teachinfishin.com. I will give him plenty of chances to pick up the conversation after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. Outdoor Magazine Show in Caro on two stations, WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Sandusky, again on two stations, WMIC 660 AM 95.3 FM. And you can hear us, let's see, we can go north of the bridge. Let's go to Escanaba. WCHT. Again, two stations, 600 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Michigan-based Whack-'em and Plack-'em, a very cool and unique way to show off your trophies. Use them with shoulder mounts, European mounts, even fish, even big Detroit River walleye. For details, check out the website nontypicalinnovations.com. That's nontypicalinnovations.com. Jason's doing a great job with that company, the website nontypicalinnovations.com. Speaking of doing a great job, Lance Valentine of Teachin Fishin, teachinfishin.com, does a wonderful job of educating anglers, entertaining anglers. Lance, before the break, you were talking about this event you've got coming up, or this, I don't know what you'd call it, program coming up, where anglers have a chance to spend a few hours in a boat with you, but you might not even be fishing. I find it interesting that you can teach people about their boat, about their electronics, about what they need to do without ever even dropping a line.
Yeah, so it's what we call definitive courses, and we came up with those last winter, trying to get everybody dialed in to get, we've got a lot of content out there, and we package it together. So we had the Detroit River one, which includes all of our Detroit River stuff, including our 3-hour Detroit River course, where myself, Mark Panazak, and Ali Shakur actually go through things that people don't even think about as far as fishing Detroit River and things they need to know to really stay on fish. And then that includes 3 hours in the boat on the river. So what we're going to do in that course is, once the guys get on the boat, obviously they've read all the content, they've watched all the content, they've watched that Detroit River course, and we're going to go around the river and kind of show them some of the things that they actually learned on the through the course. So we're going to talk to them about boat control. We're going to talk to them about how to keep your boat right on the right depth of an edge. We're going to show them on a map and show them on the sonar how these travel routes actually lay out. We're going to show them some of my favorite places to fish and run. So there's a lot of stuff going on that really doesn't include putting a rod in the water. That is basic, knowledge that you need. So when you do go down there, you're ahead of the game, you're ahead of the curve, you've got a good foundation. And we've got a electronics one coming up that covers sonar and GPS, and then time on the water to actually see how that should work. Then we just put the finishing touches on a trolling definitive course, which is all of our trolling content, and then 4 hours on the Angler Qwest, where folks will be able to actually hands-on set all the boards, set all the lines, set all the diving devices, learn about trolling spread and all that stuff. So we call them definitive courses, and they're right there on the homepage at teachinfishin.com. Unfortunately, the Detroit River one is sold out for the definitive, but the 3-hour course that guys can download and watch at their own convenience and their own pace with myself, Ali Shakur, and Mark Panazak, that is still there, still available to watch, and has some content and some ideas and thoughts about the Detroit River that I guarantee you 95% of the guys that fish Detroit River have never, ever thought about. They may have seen it, and they may have had it happen, but they don't know why it happened. So we explain how all that works, from how fish come in the river to how they move to how they leave the river to the best places to catch them during every part of the process of pre-spawn to spawn to post-spawn. So lots of great information there that that we want to pass on to anglers, just make them better so they can enjoy the river more.
I was thinking about you last week when I was fishing the Saginaw River. And I was also thinking about another great angler who I fished with years ago, Gary Roach. And he was, I'm thinking about jig size. Gary was very particular. I mean, he was pitching and jigging 1/4 ounce and 1/8 ounce or even smaller jigs whenever he could. And I'm thinking, there's my buddy Lance Valentine who says, don't, use the biggest jig. Bounce the bottom. It doesn't matter how big, bounce the bottom. And as I was trying to feel the bottom with a lighter jig, I said, to heck with this, and put on a heavier jig so I could feel the bottom with every thump, thump, thump. I thought, oh, my buddy Lance, he's got something going there. Lance was right.
Yeah, I don't know about right, but it definitely makes a difference if you don't do it every day, right? And what people have to understand is there's a huge difference between recreational fishing, charter fishing, and tournament fishing, right? I mean, there's a huge difference. So obviously for recreational guys, and I include my charter customers as recreational fishermen, you want to make it as easy as possible, right? The easier it is to feel the bottom, the easier it is to feel the jig, the easier it is to feel a bite, the more fun you're going to have, the more fish you're going to catch. The easier it is to control the boat. The heavier the jig, the easier it is to control the boat. All of that just makes it so much easier, right? As you start to lighten up your jig, your boat control has to be much more precise. You have to pay much more attention to what's happening, because not being able to feel the jig as good means you can't feel something different on the jig, and most bites on the river are just your jig just doesn't feel right, just feels different. So if you're constantly trying to force yourself to feel the jig, you can't feel those little subtle changes in the jig. So, but again, I used to tournament fish, way back when, and we used to think about the lightest jig possible. And when I started guiding on Detroit, I fished a 3/8 ounce fireball jig with a live minnow and a stinger hook on the front. I gave my customers 1/2 ounce jigs, and I couldn't figure out why they couldn't feel the bottom, because that's what we did. But, I couldn't even talk to my customers because I was so focused on my boat control with that lighter jig. And now that I do it, quote unquote, wrong, I'm catching more fish than I ever caught before. It's easier to catch fish. I think more people are catching fish doing it wrong, and I catch more big fish than I ever caught doing it right. So, I don't know. Sometimes we get stuck in things that we think are right, and then if we do break away and get out of that bubble and kind of work on the why and the process of changing, sometimes that change actually is something better than what we thought was right before.
Well, as I'm drifting along and I'm bouncing this heavy jig off the bottom, I'm thinking there's no way a walleye is going to be able to suck this thing in. And then about a 5-inch walleye came in and sucked that big jig in his mouth, and I didn't snag him. He took it right in the mouth. I'm thinking, okay. It does it. The thought that a fish can't suck in a big jig just isn't valid.
And when you're fishing vertical, that jig really doesn't weigh anything, right? I mean, it's just going up and down the water column. And actually, as you start to drop it, now there's kind of, I don't want to call it slack line, but your line isn't tight like it is when you're lifting as you drop it. And you got to remember, too, so this is what we teach everybody, a big jig falls back to the bottom with more inertia. So it's trying to get back to the bottom. So if a fish comes up and just opens his mouth, the jig is trying to go down his throat, whereas a small jig is just kind of tinkling down and it doesn't get into his throat as fast. A big jig is actually trying to go down there, so any movement at all of that fish to suck water in and bring that jig into his mouth is actually going to be easier for him to get a big jig in his mouth because it's already coming than it is a light jig, which is really not coming at him. So you got to look at all the things and what happens under the water and kind of how the whole hydrodynamic and, that whole, I mean, I learned words that I never knew before when I started, testing our jig.
You've taught me words I've never learned before, too.
Yeah, I'm like, what the heck are we talking about? But when you stop and think about it, it makes sense, right? That jig is actually trying to fall into the fish's mouth because it's heavy and it wants to go down, whereas the light jig is kind of slowly falling down. It actually takes more for a fish to pull a small jig down to him than it does a big jig because the big jig is already coming at him.
Do you have to use live bait and deal with the hassle of that, or can you get by with plastic alone?
So I bought minnows last year, or a couple years, 2 years ago, whatever it was we could fish, but we couldn't fish the Canadian side. Whatever year it was, we were stuck on the American side. The water was really, really clear. And 2 days I bought minnows for my customers. I didn't use them. I caught just as many fish without them, but my customers kind of, wanted to have minnows. So I bought them for my customers. I don't. That's the first time in the last 15 years I've actually bought a minnow. So I don't think when you know. And again, here's where I think people have to change how they think about fish. On the lake, in the river, I don't care. Stop fishing for fish that don't want to bite. Stop fishing for fish that aren't actively feeding. Stop fishing for fish that aren't aggressive. Go look for the dumb ones. Go look for fish that are actively right now opening their mouths and chasing bait. Those you can catch a lot easier. You don't have to be a good fisherman. You can do everything wrong and still catch those fish. Too many guys try to coerce that one fish off the bottom that doesn't want to bite, and they got to use light jigs and small jigs and live bait or a bottom bouncer or a crawler harness. Stop fishing for those fish. Somewhere in your body of water, there are fish that want to bite. Go find those. Then it's a whole lot more fun and a whole lot easier. Stop fishing for fish that don't want to bite, that aren't actively, aggressively feeding right now.
I'll take a dumb fish any day. A dumb fish is a good fish.
There's my preaching for the day.
No. As you're saying this, I'm thinking, doggone it, there he is once again. He says things that make such sense when I hear you say them, but when I'm out there on the water and I'm thinking about all these different things and I'm trying to figure things out, I don't see the clarity of it oftentimes until I hear you describe what's going on out there, Lance. That's just
if you make a good pass on a known community spot in the Detroit River. If you make a good pass, and your boat was in control, and you kind of knew what was going on, you were kind of on it, and you catch one fish, and you see one or two fish caught, get out of there. You're making 17 more passes isn't going to make those fish bite. Get out of there, and go find some active, aggressive fish. And too many guys spend way too much time fishing either number one where there's places that there are no fish, or number two, fishing where they have no chance of ever getting bit. So that's one of the things we try to do at Teachin Fishin' is teach the process of understanding where the active, aggressive fish are, how to locate them, how to identify them, and then go back and catch them because it's a whole lot easier.
You're amazing, Lance. I just every time I talk with you, my eyes are open. Do you have any openings this spring for people to book with you, or are you just absolutely filled up?
Unfortunately, I do not. I've got a couple guys that work for me that teach the same thing we do and preach the same way we do. So if you want to get a hold of me, send me an email at teachinfishin@gmail.com. I'd be more than happy to put you in touch with guides that we know are going to do a good job. But yeah, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, I think I had 87 trips available this year, and as of right now, every single one of them is booked. So I'm looking forward to getting down there and seeing some people, seeing some old people, meeting some new customers, and just enjoying just the fantastic opportunity that we have provided for us down there on the Detroit River.
Lance, always a pleasure. Have a great season down there this spring, and you and I will talk again.
Can't wait, Mike. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Lance Valentine of Teachin Fishin', teachinfishin.com. That's teachinfishin.com. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, let's check in with Nick Green of MUCC. I know their annual convention's going on right now. That used to happen midsummer, so they switched it to the spring. We'll talk with Lance, and then coming up in hour number 3, we'll continue on a fishing vein with Mr. Angler Qwest himself, Brad Dupuie, and of course we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. That's coming up here this week, right here on Outdoor Magazine. Outdoor Magazine Show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY. That's 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra, 1330 WTRX. And you can hear us in Traverse City on WTCM, 580 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Suspension Max. When it was time for me to lift up the front end of my new Silverado ZR2, I went to the folks at Suspension Max. I've worked with them for several vehicles now. They do a great job. They can lift your truck. They can level your truck. They can make it look better. They can give you more room for bigger tires, which is what I was looking for as well. Check them out online at suspensionmax.com, and Max is MAXX, suspensionmax.com. While you're online, of course, my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. The website for the Michigan United Conservation Clubs is MUCC.org. MUCC is an organization that I'm a member of. It's an organization that I support. I think they do a great job in looking out for and protecting the best interests of hunters and anglers and shooters and trappers here in our great state of Michigan. Nick Green is the Chief Information Officer for MUCC, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Nick, welcome back. What's going on?
We are getting ready for convention, so when folks are listening to this, we'll be probably right in the middle of business or just getting ready to start it on Saturday.
Nick, I thought that used to be in the summertime.
It did. This year we've kind of made the move to the spring, and our hope is, we kind of are going to align that with other banquet seasons, convention seasons, and then it'll give us kind of a free and clear summer to work through other priorities for staff.
Well, actually, I think that's a great idea because somebody's not giving up a summertime weekend to come to the convention.
It is. We have folks on both sides of the coin. Some folks have kids, so they don't really want a March event. They want to have spring break off, and then other folks in the summer. So kind of 6 in one, half dozen in the other. But we're excited. We have 17 resolutions coming. It's all about grassroots process. So this is all member-driven. We have resolutions involving wolf-dog conflict. We have some that require NRC meeting locations to be in the UP in northern Michigan and kind of circulated the state. And then another one that's been talked about a bunch is tracking with game dogs. Or with dogs, tracking deer with dogs, and this is something that's coming up the Natural Resources Commission now. So we're excited about it. Again, this is kind of our Super Bowl, really give folks an opportunity to dig into our policy, get involved, and this is kind of where the rubber meets the road for us.
Well, and what weight or what weight do these resolutions carry? So,
it really kind of depends on what the resolution is. Some of them have a legislative directive. Some of them have a NRC, Natural Resources Commission directive. Some of them are purely educational. And then it really gives staff kind of the order or the marching order. So, if there's something legislatively that we're going to go work on, could take 10 years to accomplish. We have resolutions that are probably over 20 years old we still haven't done. But, the flip side of that is some resolutions where we get done within the same year. It just kind of depends on what the issue is, what we have to work through, what the hurdles might be, and then who might be the governor, who might be the commissioners at the time of that we're trying to work on it. So it all kind of depends. But any of those that are passed become our staff marching orders. They go into our resolution document, and that's how we determine what our priorities are each year.
I use this convention as an example. You always talk about MUCC being a grassroots organization, but I use this convention as proof of that because there's no better sense or example of a grassroots organization than having a meeting, a convention, where your members get together and tell you what they want you to do. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely. We don't live in a world where a lot of organizations operate like us anymore, where our members truly come together. They get to decide what the organization is going to undertake and what direction it should head in. So it truly is grassroots. I would appreciate anyone to get involved. They can go to MUCC.org to do that.
Next time we talk, will you be able to kind of let us know how the convention went and what was adopted, what was approved, and what wasn't?
Absolutely. That'll also give us a little bit more kind of direction with what's going on at the NRC with dog tracking off lead. So yes, next time we talk, we will have more coverage from our resolutions and the awards we gave out and everything else that happened during convention weekend.
I will look forward to that. In the meantime, you had a chance to do anything fun, Nick?
I am going to hopefully head out walleye or steelhead fishing today, so we will see.
Walleye, steelhead. How do you decide whether you're going east or west?
That's exactly where I'm at right now. going to kind of depend on where I'm hearing report or what the reports are saying. So.
Well, you can't go wrong either way, Nick. Have fun and good luck with the convention. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much, Mike. Take care.
Appreciate that. Nick Green, the Chief Information Officer of MUCC, MUCC.org. If you want to become a member of MUCC, or go to the website, MUCC.org. And to be honest, I used to say, hey, use the promo code Avery or Mike or whatever it was and save 25%. But I don't know. The membership to MUCC is so inexpensive. They are such a bare bones operation. I say if you're going to sign up, just spend a few bucks, sign up, and support conservation in Michigan. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in hour number 3, we're going to talk fishing. Talk big water fishing, big water trolling. With Mr. Angler Qwest himself, Brad Dupuie. I've worked with this company for several years now. I've seen him grow to the point where now it's really hard to get an Angler Qwest. Is that a concern? And is there something in the pipeline that will change that? And then, of course, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. That's coming up in hour 3 as I take a drink as well. In hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Ludington on News 97, 98, 98.7 WLDN. You can hear us in the Sioux on News Talk 1400 WKNW. And you can hear us in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by my friends from Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. Now, the way the Ask Avery segment works, this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show. You can send me an email. That's the best way to do this. Send me an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. You can use one of the social media messaging platforms, but it really works better if you send me an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's what Robert Cook did. Robert sent me an email. He said, hey, Mike, every spring I see pictures of people holding big fish on the Detroit River. This ties into earlier in the hour talking with Lance Valentine. He says, it looks like a lot of those fish are big females filled with eggs, and I don't think they get released. He says, why don't people put those fish back and let them spawn? It seems pretty greedy of me to catch and keep those big fish. Robert, first of all, I appreciate the question. I appreciate the email. And this is a concern that a lot of people have this time of year. I hear this all the time from people saying, well, they're just being greedy. They're catching and they're keeping those big fish. Now, the truth of the matter is, if you were to try to do this on most resources, on most bodies of water, on most fisheries, you wouldn't be able to do it. You couldn't catch and keep these big spawn-filled females on an inland lake or a UP lake because it would have a detrimental effect on the resource. But they're on the Detroit River that is fed by Lake Erie on one end and Lake St. Clair on the other. You've got these two fish factories producing millions and millions of fish. The biologists even will say that recreational fishing, sport anglers can't hurt that resource. Now, I know, I get it. It makes you nervous when you hear somebody say, well, you can't hurt that resource. But according to the biologists, according to the experts, if you don't take more than your limit, you're not going to hurt the resource. Yes, if you want to take one of these big if you want to release all these big spawn-filled fish to let them go, fine, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. But the truth of it is, it doesn't matter to a resource if you take a fish out of the population in March or April, or if you take her out of the population in June or July. So I understand, Robert, why you say it makes you nervous and it makes you think that these people are being greedy. But according to the biologists, according to the experts, it's okay. So here's what I would ask, because I see a lot of shaming on social media. People, saying, you're being greedy. You shouldn't take those fish. I think we have enough infighting between hunters and anglers and outdoor enthusiasts in general. Let's not take any area, right? I don't care if it's shooting a small buck or taking a big spawn-filled female. If it's legal, let's support each other. All we can ask of our fellow hunters and anglers is that they abide by, that they conduct themselves in a legal manner. The morality and the ethics are completely personal. I'm not going to try to mandate my morals or my ethics to you. I will if I see you doing something that is blatantly illegal. As a fellow hunter or angler, I will maybe talk to you about it, maybe suggest you do something different, maybe call the rap line. But if you're doing something legally, it's not up to us as fellow hunters and anglers. And Robert, I realize you are not coming at this from this perspective. You are not one of those people who is publicly or online or in social media shaming people or saying they're doing something wrong. You are asking a legitimate question, which is what I like the Ask Avery segment to do. But the truth of it is, from a biological perspective, you're not hurting the resource, and you're not doing anything wrong by keeping some of those fish. I understand why it becomes a concern. You got thousands of anglers on that water every day, and what if they're keeping 5 big, huge fish? I get it. I can see why that's a concern. But the biologists say that you're not going to hurt those fish. Now, if commercial fishermen came in there with nets or something, that's a different ballgame. So thank you, Robert. I appreciate you bringing up that question. Again, he sent me an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I would encourage you to do the same. And thank you to our friends at Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in hour number 3, Brad Dupuie, Mr. Angler Qwest, the guy who started this whole concept of big water fishing pontoons, tri-tunes, triple tubes. They've become very, very popular, maybe to the point of so popular it's hard to get those boats. We'll talk to Brad about that. And then we'll wrap up the show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. I don't know if we'll do a recipe this week or if we'll continue on one more week on this whole concept of just how to prepare fish and wild game. So that's coming up in hour 3 of this week's show. My name is Mike Avery. The show is Outdoor Magazine. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address, Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I hope you can stick around for hour 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Qwest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And I'm so glad to be along with you. I really consider this an honor and a blessing to be able to do this show. And there are so many different things that you could be doing right now, so many different types of media you could be watching or listening to. So the fact that you're hearing my voice either on the broadcast version of the show or the podcast version of the show really does mean a lot to me, and I really do appreciate it. And I thank you very much for that. It is officially springtime now. That's what the calendar says. And I'm excited about a lot of things. I'm excited about turkey season coming up. I'm excited about my springtime bear hunt. up in Ontario. I'm excited to get the Angler Qwest back on Saginaw Bay. I don't deny that I love that resource. And yeah, it is my home body of water, and I do talk about it a lot because that's where I spend a lot of time. And I've seen this fishery, I've seen it rebound, I've seen it become viable and vibrant, and I've seen a lot of other things kind of grow around that and then some. And I'm thinking right now about Angler Qwest boats. I first saw an Angler Qwest, and I've told this story before, but I saw it sitting on the grass at an outdoor show in Freeland, I don't know, several years ago now. And I looked at that thing, and I walked by, and at first I just discounted it. I said, that's a pontoon. I'm not interested. Then I looked at it again. I stood back, and I looked at it some more, and I got up on it. I sat in that thing. I said, this thing could be a fishing boat, which was kind of weird because I'd always been told, well, you can't take a pontoon out on big water like Saginaw Bay or Lake Erie or Lake Michigan. And that probably was true of the old style pontoons. 2 tubes, small outboards. Yeah, you probably didn't want to take them out on big water, at least on anything other than a really, really nice day. But the folks at Angler Qwest, which is a Michigan-based family-owned company, by the way, have taken this concept and grown it. Brad Dupuie is a guy who I credit with this. I call him Mr. Angler Qwest. Now, Brad is going to say, there's a lot of people who have helped us along the way, and I acknowledge that. I realize that. But it was Brad's vision who came up with this idea of let's take a pontoon and let's make it something more. Let's make them big water fishing machines. And they've been very, very successful, and Brad is with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Brad, welcome back. How are you?
Spring is in the air. Spring is here. We're talking Angler Qwest, so I'm great.
Hey, listen, it was so nice to see you and your wife, Bridget, too, at our Trinity Monitor dinner. That was a great event, and I appreciate you coming out to support us, Brad.
No, we were excited to be there. It was a great crowd, and watching everything unfold and everything, the money that was raised, I thought was great. A great cause. So I was glad to be a part of it, Mike.
I do appreciate that. Let's talk about Angler Qwest. Like you said, you and I could talk about Angler Qwest forever, but it's getting to be that time of year here in Michigan. It's getting to be time to get back on the water again.
Yes, it is. Things are opening up. Ice is leaving us. Starting to hear some very good reports, and I'm excited to get out there, and I know you are excited as well, Mike.
I am. When I look at the evolution of Angler Qwest as a company and the boats, I talk about that first prototype I saw. Man, Brad, you've come a long way since that boat.
Yeah, that is a fact. That very first boat was, housed with a center console that was traditionally meant to go on the side of the boat. We just retrofitted it into the middle of the boat. The very first Trax Tech tower, the very first set of binary walls, and things have absolutely evolved an incredible amount, and we're going to continue to evolve to make the product better and better.
I don't know how you can do that, Brad. I mean, I get in the water on that thing and I say, this is the complete fishing machine. How do you continue to make them better?
Well, I think little details are the way to really make them better and improve. Thicker materials, more testing that I've been doing that I'm going to continue to do will help show things that we need to tweak and improve. There's always things to work on an Angler Qwest, and I myself am a little guilty of changing things all the time and always chasing that perfect boat. But in reality, there's times where I have to kind of sit back and let production take a hold of that boat and have a consistent product to build. And I'm kind of in that mode right now.
Well, and speaking of production, you guys at Angler Qwest and the entire world went through a real tough time with COVID, and it was tough to get material. It was tough to get products. I mean, are we coming out of that yet, or are you still feeling that?
Well, we are absolutely coming out of it. There still are some shortcomings on the raw material side. Compared to the way it has been the last couple of years, it has improved substantially. When we're shipping boats, we're not shipping with back-ordered parts. For a couple of years there were times where just little pieces and components you couldn't get, and 5, 6, 7 items back ordered on the boat was pretty common for us and a lot of manufacturers. So it is definitely improving. We are definitely coming out of it. We're starting to see motor lead times start to come back, so they're closer to reality. For a couple of years there, almost every motor brand was out a year on big motors, anything 175 and bigger. So we're definitely seeing that improve substantially, and things are improving. We're not quite 100% there, but we're getting close, and things are absolutely improving.
You talk about big motors. Now, that first Angler Qwest that I ran had a 150 horse Merc on it, and I thought it was great. I thought it was just fine. I didn't feel like it was underpowered at all. Now, Brad, the one I'm running has a 300 on it, and you guys are looking at going even bigger. Is this is this unique to Angler Qwest, or is this the way it is in the boating industry in general?
I think in general, that is just the way it is going. Bigger type packages seem to be the desired thing. That very first boat was a 22-footer also, where your boat, the one I'm going to be running this year, are going to be 26-footers. So you would probably want a little larger than a 150. I think it's a combination of bigger boats, and I think it's also the fact that people just desire the big horsepower stuff. So I think it's twofold there.
Well, and I can see this from two perspectives. We're Americans, so bigger is better, and we want more powerful. I get that. But also, from a pragmatic point of view, that bigger outboard is one reason why you can run these big triple tubes on big water is because it gives you the power to get up on top of this chop, where maybe a smaller outboard wouldn't do that.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely helps to have the extra horsepower to get you up on plane and get you on that surface to help enable that boat to handle that bigger water. Absolutely. I think one thing that I have seen this year, a lot of costs have gone up, every cost for that matter. With COVID being behind us, it seems like cost is something that's increased. Are starting to see people a little more value conscious now. People who are kind of, rather than I want the biggest stuff, all the stuff, concentrate a little bit more on 22-footers with more modest engines, trying to find that value that works for them. So there is a little bit of that coming back a little bit as well post-COVID here, but there's no doubt the bigger motors help you get up on top and help that boat perform. Absolutely.
I've seen on some other tri-tunes that some companies are putting outboards on the two outside tubes, dual outboards. Is that something Angler Qwest is looking at?
We are not looking at that at this exact point in time. If that was something that we're going to look at, that's going to be a project that's most likely a few years out. That is primarily in the pleasure boat sector. There's absolutely interest in that, especially when you start talking in the waters down in Florida, Texas, those coastal waters. They really like the dual motor scenario. I think it'd be a great trolling boat too, to be able to have everything come right up the center with no motor, netting fish and dealing with fish and netting fish and getting baits out. It'd be pretty doggone sweet. It is something that we're not looking at this point in time. We talk about it here and there, but honestly, it's a big endeavor, and that's way in the future if something like that is going to be conceived and move forward on.
But you have come up with a way to put a second motor on these Angler Qwest. Now you got kicker motors you can put on them these days, right?
We do. We have a system now where it needs to come out of the factory rigged with it. The whole motor mount is actually cut right into the sheet of material that is on the back section of the tube, and it emulates those dual motor type designs. So it's one that we did a lot of testing on. I ran it hard along with Dan Jordan last year, November and December, trying to get rough water hours to make sure that thing was good and robust. So yes, that is something that we offer, and we do a lot of those, and a lot of people really want that extra kicker. So it's something that you absolutely can get, and is a common option for sure.
We're talking with Brad Dupuie. I call him Mr. Angler Qwest of Angler Qwest Pontoons. The website, anglerquestpontoons.com. That's anglerquestpontoons.com. And Qwest is Qwest, anglerquestpontoons.com. He is the guy who came up with that very first prototype that I saw sitting there on the grass at that sports show, and he is the guy who continues, along with help from the staff. I get that, and engineers and designers and the production people. You know, there's a lot of folks at that shop there in St. Louis, Michigan. I should mention that. Michigan-based, made in St. Louis. How cool is that? We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more with Brad Dupuie, Mr. Angler Qwest, right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. You can hear us in Tawas on WIOS 1480 AM and 106.9 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Killer Food Plots, Michigan-based Killer Food Plots. I can't say enough about these guys. Rich Krzan is doing a great job. And it's, depending on where you live in the state, it's still frost seeding season, but it won't be too long. It'll be time to start thinking about full-blown food plot planting season. Killer Food Plots can help you out with that. They can help you out with property management. They can help you out with soil samples. They can take care of the whole gamut. If you want to improve the habitat on your property, Michigan-based Killer Food Plots can do that for you. Check them out online at killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. While you're online, check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and then head on over to anglerquestpontoons.com. That's the website of Michigan-based Angler Qwest Pontoons. Their parent company, Apex Marine, has Angler Qwest Pontoons, Qwest Pontoons, and now Polar Craft boats as well. Brad Dupuie is a guy who's worked on the Angler Qwest concept since the very beginning. Brad, I've asked you this before, but I'll ask you again now. Did you ever think, when you took that first prototype out on Saginaw Bay, did you ever think the concept would be embraced to the extent that it has been?
Well, originally when it was designed, and I thought about it because my background was V-bottom fishing boats. I've always been a hardcore fisherman, and I fished out of fiberglass and aluminum fishing boats. So in theory, in thought, I questioned it personally, but I will tell you this. When we created the very first prototype, and I got that out on the water with my family in about a 15-mile-an-hour southwest wind, it was choppy out there. It actually blew me away on how stable it was, how much room was in it, and how well it fished. After that very first trip, when I went back to Linwood Beach Marina and talked to the guys, I said, that boat is awesome. And it does not surprise me because of that first experience when I was on the water. It's something that we're seeing dealers throughout the country desiring them. There's a lot of applications where it's very, very practical, and it's really been cool to see the growth and really gratifying, Mike.
It has been cool to see the growth, and when the boats first came out, when I first started promoting them, one of the challenges, one of the obstacles was to get people to accept the fact that you were going on big water with a pontoon, even though it was a tri-toon and a big motor. People were reluctant at first. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think people accept it now, but there are other challenges these days, Brad. With number one, the demand is so high for your boats. It's just meeting that demand is a challenge, I got to believe.
The last couple of years, it absolutely has been. With the COVID and the shortcomings on materials and purchase goods, it's been terrible on getting customers their boats in a good timing fashion. So that has been a challenge, but we are starting to see things are starting to normalize. Things are getting better in the material flow world. Dealers it's business is getting back to normal. So it's really nice to get the COVID stuff behind us and all those shortages behind us and get back into normalcy. And that is very pleasant to be back to normalcy, if you will.
I got to believe, though, they're at Angler Qwest, your Apex plant in St. Louis, that you got a leg up on a lot of the other companies because you do so much of this in-house. Yeah, you've got to go outside for some stuff, but man, most of that boat is built right there in that shop in St. Louis.
Yeah, absolutely. We have our own fabrication department that creates our own tubes. We have our own wall department that creates all our wall assemblies. And a very, very important thing is we have our own furniture that we build in-house here. And many, if not most manufacturers do not have that capability. And for us to be vertical in that perspective helps our supply, helps our quality. It helps us a lot of fold when it comes to having that resource in-house. I know, especially over COVID, I can't tell you how many times I heard manufacturers were slowed down drastically due to furniture that they were purchasing that they couldn't get. So the verticalness that we have here is very, very critical, and it's something that we're building on, and we're always going to try to keep a leg up and try to take advantage of that verticalness, if you will.
You talked about those tubes. I mean, that's the heart of the boat. We don't see them for the most part because you're sitting on top of them. They're hidden by a big floor, but that's the heart of this boat. How big are they these days? I mean, what's the diameter, and what are you making out of these days, Brad?
They are 25-inch diameter tubes. Each tube has 3 sealed chambers for purposes of safety. The baffles are fully welded so that we have those sealed chambers. And then our material of the tubes is 0.125 thick material. That is very, very beefy, and that is important with the big water application that we see. It's something that we evolved to, and that is the specs on the tubes, and they are very robust, and really glad that we're at where we're at right now.
You know, I wouldn't want to jinx anything or cause any problems, but I got to believe that boat's one of the safest out there. I mean, you got 3 great big tubes underneath you. Each one of those is sealed, so if you did, God forbid, get a leak, it's not going to be a catastrophic event.
Yeah, that's right. And there are 3 volumes of air, like you said, in a triple tube. And now with the outside tubes having 3 sealed chambers, that adds a whole nother element of safety to help improve that design. So, yeah, absolutely. It's important, and having those 3 chambers of air is a very, very good thing. Yes.
You also mentioned some interest in the boats outside of the Great Lakes. You know, I think of it as a Michigan boat, but you're catching on across the country. Is there where are the other big markets, and do you see yourself going into the saltwater fishery at all?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really, really great opportunity down in Florida. We've seen some really good traction down there, up on Texas, on the coastal waters. We see a big demand for angler Qwest there as well. Out in the Minnesota, the Dakotas, in those areas, we're seeing a heavy demand. And those guys aren't necessarily trollers. They have a lot of different designs that apply to their fishery. We see the all-sport is seeing a lot of traction down south on the all-sport, which is more family than fishing, but has really great rear end, stern, and bow fishability. So the pro fishing cruise with the T-top style design is something that is very desired in those coastal waters. So we're seeing pockets throughout the whole nation and a little different applications in those areas. It's not all just a trolling fishery, and we're seeing the growth throughout the U.S. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm used to seeing the pro troll up here, but you mentioned the catfish, the striper version, and they are multi-species. You mentioned Dan Jordan. We fished the Detroit River with Dan a few years ago, drifting and jigging out of his angler Qwest.
Yeah, that is another application that people have the tendency to think it's a big pontoon that's going to catch air and the wind is just going to destroy the opportunity to be vertical when jigging. But Dan definitely proved that. We fished some very windy conditions and the boat did great. When it's really windy, it doesn't matter what kind of boat you're in. It's a challenge to keep vertical. But the angler Qwest with a 60-inch shaft and a 36-volt, 112-pound thrust system definitely did the job and held us in place to keep vertical. So that was another perspective of fishing that was very successful, for sure.
So, Brad, when are you going to get a chance to kick off your springtime trolling? And will it be Saginaw Bay or will it be over on Lake Michigan, southern Lake Michigan, chasing coho?
Well, I don't think I'm going to make it down there this spring. I had plans to. I myself am going to be breaking away a lot more and fishing and testing substantially. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. I would guess I'll be in the water by late April. And my goal is to pound the living heck out of the fishery. I definitely want to go on the west side and pursue some kings. I want to get over in the Wisconsin area. They have a great, pretty close to shore rainbow fishery, brown trout fishery, coho fishery that extends fairly late in the season. So I've got that in my sights as well. And one of my main intentions and goals is to get out there and fish a lot more. So that I'm looking at late April. I'm hoping to be in the water.
Well, I like I like the way you use the term testing. I know what testing is. You can call it what you want, but that's a day on the water.
It is, but it is also very important to be running the boat with our latest and greatest gear to, evaluate it. And if we need improvements, it'll show that. So there is testing, but like you said, it's on the water stuff. So it's good stuff.
And what are those latest improvements? I didn't ask you. What did you do for the 23 models?
We went with the 23 model. We squared off the rear portion, the stern of the boat, have a little bit of a back deck back there, about a foot or so. That's for purposes of weight distribution. It's also there to be able to access the gas tank much easier. But the squareness off the back really helped our quality and helped us form the rear walls. And that little square in the corner, I was surprised how much larger it makes it feel in the stern of the boat with that corner being sharp. The rod holders are tucked away right behind the binary wall, so it really opens up the room. So that rear fencing of the boat, we improved substantially for 23 to make it more manufacturing friendly and to make it nice and robust, much more than even what it was. Also in 23, we went to the thicker tube design and the multiple chambers as well. So a couple things there, but they're very big things, and happy to roll those out. And I'm looking forward to fishing in the latest and greatest, Mike.
Well, Brad, I'm looking forward to hopefully getting out on the water with you this summer, early summer. If we can do a Wednesday night live like we've done in the past, get out there and show people your spoon program on Saginaw Bay. Would you be open to that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's plan on it. I talk to people all the time that listen to you religiously when I'm at shows, and they talk about the lives and how we fished, and people really like that. And it's really cool to show them my perspective, how I fish, and yours as well, and hopefully some success when we're out there. So in my opinion, we should go a couple times. I am ready. Let's do it.
Let's do that, and I will also do a Wednesday night live going over my boat when I get it in the water as well. Brad Dupuie, Mr. Angler Qwest, appreciate your time. Good fishing, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mike.
Brad Dupuie, Mr. Angler Qwest. Again, the website for Angler Qwest Pontoons is anglerquestpontoons.com. That's anglerquestpontoons.com. Don't forget to check out the Angler Qwest podcast every month as well. You can find that on that website, anglerquestpontoons.com. We'll take a break here. When we come back, there's a few more things I want to talk about. And then also, Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar will join us as well. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including WTIQ in Manistee, that's 1490 AM, 95.3 FM, and in Saginaw, News Radio 790 AM and 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now. I borrowed this one little part of the corner of the studio from Pat Johnston, and listen, Pat, you saved my bacon today. My friends, I'm not even going to tell you the screw up that I did earlier in the show, because you'll never know it, because Pat saved me. He made me aware that I was basically, I don't know what I did, but I screwed up pretty good. And Pat, you saved me, and I do appreciate it. Also appreciate the fact that this segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Versa Skins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. And they're not just for hunting either, right? I was wearing Versa Skins when I was on the Saginaw River last week, walleye fishing jigging for walleye in the Saginaw River. and it was cold, and Versa skins kept me warm. But if I wanted to use that same set of clothes to go hunting at night or whatever, I could change the pattern. If I was going to be out in the snow, if I was going to go back up north where there's still some snow, snap on and zip on an outer liner. It takes like a minute to change the outer pattern. Versaskins.com is the website. Versaskins.com. So I was thinking about that day on the river, and I keep going back to it because I haven't done it for a long time, and it was really a thrill. Eagles flying over, all kinds of boats in the river, all kinds of fish in the river, a lot of small fish, but enough big fish to keep it worthwhile, and it was an awful lot of fun. When I think about the fishing resources, the bodies of water that we have in our state, the world-class fisheries. I haven't even talked about steelhead this week. Right now, steelhead is really hot on many of the rivers on the west side of the state. I've been seeing some beautiful pictures. Somebody sent me some pictures from a day they had on the water with Paul Schlafly of Riverside Charters out of Manistee on the Manistee. And it's just two big, beautiful steelhead. Our resources that we have here, our fisheries here are just phenomenal. I would encourage you to get out and try to take advantage of them. Just one note here, though. Come March 1st, or maybe it's the 2nd, I don't know. But when March gets here, you will need a new fishing license. So don't forget about that. I, of course, got taken off my auto renew because I'm going to be too old this year. That's not it, right? When you're 65, you can get a senior license. And so they said, hey, Avery, you're going to be 65. We're going to take you out of auto renew. You can still get your licenses. You just don't want to auto renew. Okay, whatever. Don't remind me. Kansas. Kansas is the latest state to jump in on the trail camera ban. Kansas is banning trail cameras on all public lands. This is not just for cell cameras, but it's also for the old-fashioned cameras where you put a chip or a card in there. I find that interesting. Technology in the outdoors is disturbing to some people, but it's also inevitable. At what point do we go too far? That's always the question, right? At what point does technology go so far that it gives we as people an unfair advantage over the wildlife or the fish? Look at the live scope. The live scope is a front-facing sonar that allows you to, say, look into a brush pile or look up on a riverbank or something, or underneath a riverbank, and you can see fish in there, individual fish, and you can cast a bait to those fish, and you can see your bait drop down to those fish and see how they react to it. Some tournaments have banned the use of live scope during their tournaments. States like Kansas now banning trail cameras. I mean, yeah, wouldn't it be cool if we could go back to everybody shooting a longbow or a recurve and a single shot, a muzzle loader or something? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't think I want to go back to that point. There's a happy medium here somewhere, but finding it is a crossbow that shoots 500 feet per second. Is that too high tech? If I remember right, when Michigan first opened crossbows to everybody, there was a speed limit on those bows. And I think it was, I don't even know what it was. Pretty slow compared to what bows shoot these days. But you can't shoot the, what's the pneumatic gun that shoots an arrow here? The air bow. So you can use a crossbow in Michigan that shoots any speed, but you can't shoot an air bow. It's interesting. I know, being kind of a geeky guy, I like technology. I use technology wherever I can in my hunting and fishing adventures. Do I think it gives me an unfair advantage? Absolutely not. No. But does it make me lazy? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's to the point now when I want to know what the weather is, I look at my watch or I look at my phone and say, oh, what's the weather? Rather than going outside and feeling the weather to see what it is, I just look at a little screen in front of me. I don't know. It's interesting. I am in favor of anything that helps us better enjoy our outdoor adventures. as long as, again, it doesn't give us an unfair advantage. And I don't think there's anything I'm doing. I don't think there's anything we're doing in Michigan right now that gives us that unfair advantage. I would not want to see trail cameras get banned here in Michigan. I would not want to see that. We'll take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we're going to wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. I don't know yet if we'll do a recipe or if we will continue on our generic conversation on how to better cook fish and wild game. Maybe I'll leave it up to Dixie Dave. You'll find out after the break. Stick around. You'll learn. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. My name is Mike Avery. Do appreciate you being along with us. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Reach out to me if you have a question for me, or also we're going to start something, questions for Dixie Dave as well. And I've already got a couple of them coming in. So if you have a question for me for the Ask Avery segment, or if you have questions for wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, use that email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. But Dixie Dave's with us now. And David, I was saying going into the break, I didn't know if we were going to have a recipe or not, but I understand you have a very nice squirrel recipe for us.
I do. It's a squirrel with black cherry sauce.
Let's hear it.
All right, you're going to need, anywhere from 4 to 6 squirrels, depending on how big of a batch of this you're going to make. And if you got, you harvested your squirrels with a shotgun, make sure you check for any bloodied meat, even if you use a 22 or a 17. Check for the bloodied meat, trim that all off real nice, and get any of the fur driven into the meat out. You want to cut them up by about 8, a couple leg front, across the back for the loins. 1 to 1.5 stalks of celery, a medium onion diced thin, some garlic to your flavor, not much, just a little bit. And you want to dice the onions very fine. You need a teaspoon or so, more or less to your flavoring, of basil leaves, a can of sweet black cherries, pitted, coarsely chopped, and save some juice. So you're going to need, if you're going to get black cherry schnapps, by all means use it. But if not, you can get black cherry jelly or jam, either one. And then you want to need a little bit of olive oil, some flour, fresh ground pepper, and some heavy cream. So what you'll do is you grate pepper all over the meat, enough to give it some flavor, but not to distract from the cherry flavor, okay? So dredge the meat in flour, a little bit of olive oil, brown them nice and gently. You don't want to burn them. And then put them in a casserole. And then you want to saute up all of the veggies. And if you're going to use schnapps, now would be the time. Or if you're using the black cherry jelly or jam, now would be the time. Add the gravy, mix it up real good, and taste it. And see if this is to your taste flavor that you're looking for. I would bake it uncovered, 350 degrees, at least an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, depending on the age of the squirrels. And just before you serve this, I would gently fold in the heavy cream, and that's going to kind of give it a little nice velvety color, and it's really adds to the flavor too, because some of the first things you taste in your mouth are fats, and so the heavy cream's 30% butter fat. So use it. And then I would serve this over rice myself, a nice fluffy white rice. That's a killer recipe. You could use this on rabbit. I've made this with rabbit and squirrel and actually goose too.
Really?
Come out great with goose, but I baked the goose a longer time than that because I use the legs and everything in the goose.
Speaking of that, Dave, one of the Ask Avery questions, and we won't do it today, but somebody's asking me how you use the drumsticks from a wild turkey. So be thinking about that because they say, you know, they're really tough. So let's do that as a future show. I also want to, just thinking out loud here, I want to do a woodchuck recipe down the road. I want to follow up on this whole concept of how we cook fish and wild game. So I'm keeping you pretty busy in your retirement days, buddy.
Good idea, thanks, because I'm bored.
Still.
Until the summer comes, and I probably won't be bored because I'll have Phragmites to cut and lawn and all of that.
There was something else I wanted to ask you, but I forgot what it was. So we'll think about that next time around. All right, David, listen, always a pleasure. I will let you go, but we're getting starting to get some good questions here for the Ask Avery segment. So we'll follow up on those and a lot more next time we talk.
Send some questions in about fish, seeing as other walleyes. Everybody's just killing them.
Oh, absolutely. Walleye fishing.
Nuts, too.
Yeah, perch. See, there's a lot going on this time of year. Why aren't you out taking advantage of it?
Oh, I'm still unloading the restaurant. I'm almost done.
All right. Well, every time I drive by there, I check and see if it's still standing, and so far it is.
Okay.
All right, David. We'll talk to you next week. Wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show. And he's been a big part of the Outdoor Magazine concept for so many years. Dave said, look, when I retire and I close the restaurant down, am I still going to be, you still going to have me on the radio show? I said, of course, Dave. Of course I will. It just wouldn't be the same to do an Outdoor Magazine show, whether it was a TV show or a radio show, without having wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar on board. Doesn't matter if he's still got a restaurant or not. He's still got a wealth of knowledge, still got a wealth of information, and I appreciate that. And I love talking with people who are knowledgeable and passionate. That's what I strive to do. I strive to find people who are knowledgeable and passionate and who love to share their information, and I try to do that every week here on the show. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I also do quite a bit on social media. For example, every Wednesday morning at 8:45 here from the radio studio, I do a live segment called Behind the Mic. It's Mike Behind the Mic. And then every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, we do a Wednesday Night Live on my Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. Love to have you join us for that. Use my email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com, for those Dixie Dave questions and also for the Ask Avery segment. Have a good week. My name is Mike Avery, and I'll talk to you next time right here on Outdoor Magazine.